Hi everyone and welcome back to this week's Sunday Sewing Club. We're back with episode 3 and this week we're going to be making this gathered peplum waist tie top. It's perfect for summer. I've got mine on today with a pair of wide leg linen trousers, but you also can pair it with some shorts or some jeans and it's just perfect, lightweight and just such a fun and easy make. So you're going to need around 1 metre of fabric, and that's based on using 150 centimetre wide fabric. So yeah, we're going to need about 1 metre, you're going to need some matching thread, you're going to need a safety pin, and you're just going to need your body measurements. That's all we're going to use today. We don't require any pattern, we are just using body measurements and rectangles to create this top. So the measurements that you're going to need are just 5, and we're going to start by taking the waist measurement. And then you're also going to need your full bust measurement. You're going to need your upper bust measurement. And then you're going to need an underarm to natural waist measurement, and then again an underarm to your natural hip. Unless you want the top to be longer, then in this case do the measurement from your underarm to the desired length of the top. I did mine to finish at the top of the natural hip, so if you're going to be doing the same, then take that measurement, or if not, continue down for whichever length you would like. Once you've taken your measurements, you can use this guide on the screen to cut your fabric. You can either take a screenshot of this, or if you scroll down to the description, I'll also link the diagram in there for you to cut your material. This is perfect if you're a beginner. You're getting lots of techniques in, but again, we're just using rectangles, so there's nothing that's too hard, there's no curves, and it's completely beginner friendly. You don't need to use a pattern, so if you're just starting off sewing, it's the perfect place to start. There's so many variations in the way that you can wear this top. You can wear it with the straps over the shoulder, you can wear it with the straps tucked in here where you can't see them, and it's just more of a tube top, or you can wear them with the straps tied behind the neck, so you've got more of a halter neck, and just tuck the straps in at the back into the top. There's just so many variations in the way that you can wear it, which is just perfect. So we're going to start by laying out our fabric, and I've got this material folded in half because on most of the panels we're going to be cutting 2 and on some of them we're going to be cutting 4. So on the screen now I've put a visual diagram of the panels that you need to cut. All of the information for this diagram is included in the description below. You will have this visual attachment, and then you'll also have the instructions step by step in text. Okay, so they're all the fabric pieces that we need, so I'm just going to go ahead now and cut all of these pieces out, and then we'll get started sewing. Okay, so when you've cut all your panel pieces, you should have 2 bust pieces and 1 long back piece, and then you should have a full body piece for the back, with again 2 for the front. And then you should have 2 waist ties and bust tie, so 2 in total. And then you should have 4 shoulder straps. Okay, so we can put all our pieces to the side. We're going to start by sewing our shoulder straps. So what we're going to do is we're just going to fold them in half lengthways. We're going to use a 1 centimetre seam allowance, and we're going to stitch a line all the way from start to finish, making sure we back stitch at the beginning and the end, and we're going to do that on all 4 pieces. So with our 1 centimetre seam allowance, back stitching at the beginning and end. So now we've sewed all of our shoulder straps, we're now going to get our scissors and we're just going to trim off the seam allowance, but don't cut too close to the stitch line, about 0.5 centimetres away. Okay, so once you've cut the seam allowance on all four and you've trimmed them down, we're now going to turn the straps the right way round. So using a safety pin, we're just going to pop the safety pin in at the end, just through one side of the material. And then we're just going to put the safety pin back on itself and thread it through to the other side. Just pulling the fabric over. And then we're going to do that on all four straps to turn them the right way round. Like this. I'm just going to do that on all four. Now once you've finished turning them all the right way round, we're going to go and press them with the seam along the edge. And then once we've pressed them, we're then going to push in the top part in by 1 centimetre, like this, just using your finger. And then you'll press it again, and that'll just close the seam off. So I'll just go and press this now. And then once you've pressed your strap and you've pushed the end part in, we're just going to finish it with an edge seam. Now what we're going to do is we're going to get our body panels, the part that's going to go around the bust area, not the full length panel, just the panel which has got the length of the underarm to the natural waist. And then we're going to finish all of the edges, so you can do this with a standard machine using a zigzag stitch, or you can use an overlapper if you have one. And we're just going to finish all of the edges on every panel. So now we've finished all the edges, we're going to align them at the sides and we're going to stitch up a straight stitch at both sides to create the side seams. And we're going to use a 1.5 centimetre seam allowance. So we'll just pop some pins in. And then we just sew with a 1.5 centimetre seam allowance from the edge. And then we're just going to go and press them seams open, like this. And then we're going to follow the exact same process as what we've just done with the full length panels. So we're going to finish all edges and then we're going to attach again at the side seams. Now what we're going to do is get our two body panel pieces and we're going to press in along the edge. We're going to press in by 0.5 centimetres, and then we're going to fold it again by 1 centimetres, and we're going to press that in place. We're going to do that on both sides, on both panels, and we're going to be folding the seam in. We're going to be folding the seam in towards the side seam, so we're folding it in on the wrong side of the fabric. We're going to do that on each of the end panels by 0.5, then again by 1, and press it, and then we'll come back and we'll stitch them in place. We're just going to sew now close to the edge, on the edge of these seams on each panel, just to close them up. Okay, so now we've finished the ends on both of our panels. We're going to lay down the main panel with the right side facing up. And this is where we're going to attach our straps. So you're going to grab your 4 straps that you made earlier. And then what we're going to do is we're going to measure halfway between this panel. So for me that's 63. So at 31.5, I'm just going to pop a pin in to mark the halfway, and then I'm just going to mark the halfway point now between the halfway and the edge. So half of 31.5 is 15.75, and I'm just going to pop a pin in here. So your measurement will be different, completely depending on what your measurements were with to start with. But basically what we're doing is we're just marking the halfway point. So halfway point between the back panel, and then the halfway point between the halfway point in the side. And this is where we're going to place our straps. So again, I'm just going to do the halfway point between here. And then we can remove that middle pin. So this is the halfway point now where we're going to put our straps. And what we're going to do is we're going to put our seam of the strap facing in towards the neck. So we're going to lay it down flat with the raw end that you didn't finish earlier. So the finished end is going to stay down the bottom, and the raw end that you didn't finish earlier is going to, with the seam pointing in towards the neck, we're going to place it on top where this pin is, with the pin directly in the middle of the strap. So we're just going to take that pin out, and we'll just pop it in there, and that is where the first strap will go. And then we'll do the same again with the strap coming down, the seam pointing in towards the neck, and we're just going to place it on top of the middle of the pin. And then we can just pop that pin in, and that is where the back ones are going to go. And then we've got 2 left for the front. So we're going to now move on to the front panel here, and we're going to do the same again. So we're going to measure it 29 centimetres. So we're going to measure it, which is 29 centimetres. So halfway is going to be 14.5. Pop a pin in there of 14.5. Again, this will completely depend on your measurements. And then we're going to get our strap, and again, we're going to place it with the pin central, with the raw edge aligning to this edge seam. Hold it in place, and we'll do the same on the other side. 14.5. Okay, so once you've got all of your straps in place, just make sure they're laying flat. And then what we're going to do is we're going to get our bust panel, and then the right side of the seam to the right side of the seam, so the right sides are facing each other. We're then going to lay this panel on top and we're going to align it at the side seams first. Pop a pin. And again we'll align this side seam here. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to stitch all the way along now with a 1.5 centimetre seam allowance to secure all the straps in and to secure this top seam. Okay, now we've attached it at the top, we're now going to open the seams up and we're going to press the seam open all the way along. And we're just going to press the seam now down, but what we're going to do is with the larger body panel on the front and the bust one behind the back, we're just going to lay it flat and we're going to press it so that the seam is closed but the panel, the bust panel behind, is just slightly below, so that you can just see a tiny little gap of the top panel on here. So now we've pressed it along, what we're going to do is we're just going to sew close to the edge, making sure not to get the straps in. We're just going to do a stitch very close to the edge here, just to secure the panel down. I like to use an overcast foot just because I find it easier to guide with the edge, but you can just use the standard foot on your machine. Again, make sure that your straps are up and you don't sew them in. So what we're going to do now is we're going to trim this seam allowance down, but just be careful not to cut into the top past the stitch line. We just want to remove the seam allowance to reduce bulk, because this is where we're going to add our channel. So just carefully go along and remove that. So now we're going to create the channels for the bust tie and waist tie to go through. So what we're going to do is we're going to sew using this top edge as our guide. We're going to go in 2 centimetres, so we're just going to stitch a line 2 centimetres away from the edge all the way along, and we're going to back stitch at the beginning and end, and then this stitch here is going to act as our first stitch, so that will be our first channel created, and then we'll go down and do the waist one. Again, be careful not to catch your straps. Okay, and now what we're going to do is we're going to create our waist channel, and we're going to use our panel underneath, the short panel that covers the bust area. We're going to make sure that it's nice and flat, and what we're going to do is we're going to use this edge as our guide. So first of all, we're going to stitch close to the edge on this panel, right along the edge here, and then again we're going to go in 2 centimetres from this edge in. We're just going to line the edge of this panel up with the edge of the foot in here as our guide. if you are a beginner and you feel more confident you pinning it, you can pin this panel all along rather than just going at it sewing. But it is quite simple to just follow as long as you keep it flat. And you can probably manage without pins, but as I say, if you're a beginner and you feel more confident with them, definitely add the pins before sewing along. And then for the second line, we're just going to lay it out flat. And then we're just going to mark 2 centimetres up from this seam, all the way along. And then once you've gone along marking 2 centimetres from the edge of the seam, and you've got all your little markings along, we're just going to grab a ruler and we're just going to join up. Just to create a line for us to follow with the machine as a guide. Now we're just going to do the same again and sew a straight stitch all the way down. Okay, so now we've put the channels in for both the bust and the waist. We're now just going to hem the bottom of the top. We're going to fold it over. So with the wrong side of the fabric facing up, we're going to fold the hem over by 0.5 centimetres and then again by 1 centimetre. We'll press that all along and then we'll finish that off with an edge stitch. So once you've pressed the hem up 0.5 and then again by 1, we're just going to stitch now right along the edge. I like to just increase the stitch length to 3 because it just gives it a nicer finish. And then we're just going to go along and finish as close to the edge as we can on this side. Okay, so to make our waist ties, we've got 2. What we're going to do is we're just going to fold the tie in half. We're going to sew down with a 1 centimetre seam allowance all the way along, back stitching at the start and finish, and then we're going to turn it through the right side out. Change my stitch length back down to 2.5. Then, once you've sewn with a 1 centimetre seam allowance, what we're going to do is we're going to trim off the seam allowance here. Careful not to cut into the stitching. And then I'm going to be using a loop turner, but you also can use a small safety pin to turn it inside out. But today I'm going to use a loop turner. And that is your first tie done. You can give it a little press with the seam facing down towards the side. And then you just need to do the exact same with the other one. And then to finish the ends, we can just poke it in at the end, like so. Give it a little press to neaten it up, and we'll just finish that off with an edge stitch here. And then we follow the exact same process for the next strap. Okay, so once we've got our straps finished, what we're going to do is we just need to close this now. So we have our 2 channels, but we just need to close the gap between the 2 channels. So, with the right side facing up, from this line here, the top of the waist channel, to this line here, the bottom of the bust channel, we're just going to line up our panels and we're just going to stitch along the same line. bottom channel here. Stitch, there we go. And the same again for the other side. Okay, so now what you're going to do is you're going to get a safety pin and you're going to pop it through the side of one of your ties, and then this is where we're going to start putting it through the channels. So we're going to put one tie through the bust channel and one tie through the waist channel. So just start and then putting it into this channel like so, and then just guide the safety pin all the way through to the other side. Just continue to keep pulling down. Now once you've got it through the other side, you can just remove the safety pin, and then you can just pull it through then like so, just gathering it up all the way. And then we can sort this out properly once we put it onto our body to fit. And then you just do the exact same process for the waist tie here. Again, just pull it through. And then we can fix these gathers once we put it on. Okay, so now we're going to do our try on. This is it finished. We're now going to do our try on and just fix all the gathers once it's on our body. Just get away any loose threads, just put them all away and neaten everything up. Thank you for watching today's tutorial. I really hope that you enjoyed it, and I would also really appreciate if you could like and subscribe. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments below, and I look forward to seeing you all again next week.